In fact, it was at the launch of TEEB, just before the launch of the interim report of TEEB, that econsense had invited me to speak. And I hope the TEEB for Business has as much success as the TEEB has. TEEB, as you know, was actually launched by the German government, Sigmar Gabriel, and by the European Commission, by Dimas, and it has become now a global project as a result of being coordinated by the United Nations Environment Programme and worked upon by a whole host of participants, all the way from the governments themselves to universities, to the business, to local governments. And today we have a situation where many governments are implementing the recommendations of TEEB, and the business world is getting together to also implement perhaps the key recommendation of TEEB, which is the need to understand, to discover, to measure, and to start managing the externalities of business. It's really important for business not only to understand its dependencies on nature, in other words, what it receives from biodiversity, but also for it to recognize externalities, in other words, its impacts on nature. So the need to measure and the need to manage are absolutely paramount. And this applies across the board. Climate change, fresh water, pollutants, chemicals, all of these are impacts of the business which it needs to understand. None of these impacts today necessarily are illegal, and very few of them are actually costed out. So these are externalities. But what is happening is, as people become more and more aware of these impacts, and as we learn the total size of these impacts, for example, the total impacts of the top 3,000 business companies was estimated at more than $2 trillion, $2 million in a year. Now this is significant. That's almost 3.5% of global GDP. And in a situation like that, it cannot be for very long that this free lunch continues. So business has to be conscious of the risk of these externalities becoming internalized and in fact start managing these costs before that happens. In so doing, it will create new technology, it will create business opportunity, it will create new labor, new markets, and the ability to enhance and support your profit and loss during a period of change, during a time when climate is changing, where the entire economic environment is changing, and where labor productivity and the need to have new opportunities for labor is paramount. Recognizing your dependencies on nature and understanding your impacts on nature, measuring them, managing them, is a success strategy for the future. So I'm delighted that we here in this meeting are launching the TEEB for Business Coalition, whose main purpose is to ensure that businesses can collaborate through the group that is being formed here in order to be able to start measuring and start standardizing so that they can start reporting and therefore bring these externalities out into the open. Bring them out into the open so that they can be measured, so that they can be reported, so that investors, customers, consumers, governments, and NGOs and everyone can be aware of these, and that CEOs can excel by showing how they've done better than the average in managing these externalities.